Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Amazing Podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazing, and we hope you like this conversation. And we want to remind you that along with these conversations, we also put out a lot more content on our website, things like tech articles on some of the cloud, some of the vendors in the space of cloud native. We also publish a lot of interviews at events like KubeCon, HashiConf, and many of the others that happen in the space. So head over there if you want to catch some really cool discussions around cloud native and Kubernetes. I'm quite excited today because I get to talk a lot about open source, and that's something that you can never have enough of, you can never talk enough about. And it's really crucial today to any organization that works in the space of cloud native and Kubernetes. Just how do they leverage and use open source in all of their projects that they run? I have with me Chad Crowell, who is the senior platform engineer at Civo. That's CIVO. And their website is civo.com, civo.com. So yeah, quite excited because they do a lot of work around open source, and that's what I wanted to talk to Chad about today. And I also found out just in talking to Chad before this conversation that they even run their own servers that they offer to customers. So they are a cloud provider in and of themselves. They don't run something off of AWS and offer it to their customers. So I found that pretty cool. It's very rare to come across that. So I'm quite excited to chat with Chad today. Chad, welcome to the Amazing Podcast. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Twain. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, Chad. So we're going to talk a lot about open source, but I want to start off with asking you about just your journey in open source. Where did it start, and where did it lead to, and how did you end up at Civo?
So I started in open source in around 2017, 2018, where I was a part of a fintech startup here in Austin. And as a part of working there as a DevOps engineer, we were migrating this project called Kubernetes. And so we're going from running our workloads on EC2 instances to running in AKS, so Azure Kubernetes Service, which was a bit different in 2017, if you can imagine, from what it is
Yeah,
today.
the early days.
So I, read all that I could, books, articles, videos, etc. And I learned about this thing called this nonprofit called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and
Mhm. Mhm.
found a lot of resources on there through the Kubernetes project, and um, decided to kind of pivot to uh, not only going in and deep diving into the CNCF and participating in projects, but also just the um, education piece around that. So I shortly after, in just late 2018, I joined Linux Academy, which was sold to A Cloud Guru, and now A Cloud Guru is a Pluralsight company. But really, through my experience in trying to learn Kubernetes and trying to learn open source and and everything like that, I was really passionate about kind of passing that along to other people. So I was a trainer for 2.5 years with them, and uh, published courses on Kubernetes and DevOps, CI/CD, and GitHub, and I think it was eight courses total. And also in that time, got to experience my first KubeCon. So KubeCon, for those who don't know, is the flagship conference of the CNCF, and really uh, it really showed that the community there is very thriving and very successful in doing what they do in terms of their contributions to code and to, having a community to, be a part of and to contribute to and to kind of embrace in terms of, pushing the project forward. And it's really I've found a good resource for just, creating a network outside of your workplace and being able to, visit and share ideas with other professionals in that same field. So I've contributed to, Kubernetes, the project on GitHub. I also have run what's called Kubernetes Community Days. So I'm an organizer for the a smaller event, not quite the KubeCon size, but much smaller, called the KCD. I also run a community group, which is a just an in-person meetup here in Austin, and also through just getting involved with the education part of the CNCF and trying to be a good mentor for others.
Wow, really cool. Reminds me of this saying that goes something on the lines of, if you want to really understand and remember something, teach it to someone else. So I'm sure that, through all of your experience, training, teaching, and mentoring, you'd have really, understood Kubernetes at quite a deeper level than many would. So yeah, quite excited to talk to you about all of that.
Yeah.
Um, to get us started on this conversation, I want to ask you this question that I don't normally start with, but I'm going to try that now. If you were to make one bold prediction about the future of cloud computing, what would it be?
I would say the cloud is going to change a lot in the coming years. My bold prediction would be it's going to be very customizable to whatever business you are in. So in the past, the cloud has just been a place where you get your servers, right? And it's turned into somewhat of a commodity. But when you go to run those servers or workloads on the cloud, it could even be serverless. Doesn't have to be bare instances or Kubernetes for that matter. You start to realize the limitations and the ways in which you're locked into this provider or that, and you're not able to uh, be flexible with where your workloads and what you're building is going to be in the future. So I think if I were to make a bold prediction, I would say the cloud is going to become very customizable and perhaps hybrid, in that a lot of companies are going, they call it cloud repatriation, and they're going towards kind of reclaiming and reclaiming ownership of their infrastructure. And I think there's going to be kind of a blend of, you know, having a service that you can rely on so it doesn't require much maintenance, for the small to medium-sized businesses, but also something that's highly customizable so you can take control and really make what you want in terms of the apps that you're building or the services that you're providing your customers. I think that's going to be highly customizable in the future.
Wow, okay, really interesting response there, and I think a lot to dig into. I want to start with the phrase lock-in that you use. Could you tell us a bit about how lock-in affects people running applications in the cloud, sometimes even in ways that they may not notice it? What would you say are some of the telltale signs that you may be having an issue of lock-in that you may not even realize? Could you tell us a bit more about cloud lock-in?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is when you store your data in S3 buckets, which is Amazon's object storage. You are happy to pay the very inexpensive cost to, you know, uh, upload your documents and data to object storage in S3 buckets. What a lot of people come to realize over time, especially the longer they keep that data in there. And perhaps if they choose even a lower cost option, such as Glacier, to keep their data in there long term, it becomes like a Hotel California situation where you can't get your data
Like a
back.
mini train
And
one. You can never
yeah,
leave.
exactly. Exactly. So it's really hard to get your data back out of the cloud once you have put it there. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind when, vendors try to lock you into using their services, in this case, S3. Another option, which is a bit more broad, is the kind of open source uh, version of whatever cloud provider you're using, right? And this includes Kubernetes. So they Kubernetes is an open source project which is available to use and consume by anyone out there in order to run their workloads. But each cloud provider has their own version of Kubernetes, which, Civo included. They call that managed Kubernetes, in which the control plane, the brains of the operation, if you will, is managed by the cloud provider. So this takes away a lot of maintenance, and it increases security, and there's a lot of benefits to it. But the downside is if you have your workloads running on those managed Kubernetes clusters, whether it's EKS or AKS or GKE, it's becomes harder and harder to convert. And with a lot of cloud providers, they have their own kind of add-ons and plugins for their Kubernetes clusters as well. It becomes very hard to migrate a cluster from EKS, AKS, GKE to maybe bare metal, or to Civo, or to anywhere else. So that's kind of an example of, taking an open source project such as Kubernetes, converting it to kind of a custom product by a cloud provider, and then applying tools and features and plugins to that, and which makes it harder to migrate off. Another example is, Amazon has their own version of um, Postgres and DynamoDB, different databases, and also they have their own Redis cache, and those are all examples of open source products that don't easily convert to anything outside of Amazon, and each cloud provider has their own.
Mhm, mhm. Interesting. Wow, those are some great examples, three of them. I want to ask you about migrating. What are some of the reasons people would want to migrate? Because I'm assuming that a lot of people would just run their applications, their infrastructure in AWS, let's say, and they've been doing that for years now, and they probably feel like it's going all right. I don't really feel the need for a change. But then there are, I'm sure, many others who also, for various reasons, would feel the need for a change and want to migrate away. Could you talk a bit about the reasons for migrating, and what are the most common reasons? What are you seeing? You also mentioned repatriation. Talk a bit about that. Why would someone want to move away from something like an AWS if they've been running it for years that way?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, the cloud is getting more and more expensive. And you would think, being that cloud is a commodity, you'd think that the more people who use it, and the more commoditized it is, the lower the price would be, and you would expect the prices to go lower and to get cheaper. But in fact, they're rising, and they continue to rise. So the biggest thing for uh, customers that are looking to move off of the cloud is cost, and controlling that cost. So as you start to utilize the many different services that are provided by the major hyperscalers, you start to rack up and accumulate cost, where where you don't expect and where you don't necessarily have complete control over. And at the end of the month, you get your bill for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't necessarily have an explanation or can exactly tell why. So that's the biggest reason why companies are moving off the cloud. And also another reason is they want to take control. Like I said before, they would like to customize the things that they're building and be able to have more flexibility and control over what they're creating and the product or services that they're providing to their customers, and being able to really um, create their own system that suits them best versus having to take kind of an out of a box or a something that's a little bit more vanilla, you know.
I was wondering if you could give us an example of this, of an organization that may want to customize a certain part of their application, but they're not able to with AWS. What are some of the examples that you've seen where, customization is a challenge?
Yeah, so customization becomes a challenge at scale in particular. So as you scale from, you know, 10 to 20 users all the way up to, 100,000 users, the story of what you're building and the story of how you're providing that product or service changes quite a lot over that time. So we're seeing, the small to medium-sized businesses in particular, being taking advantage of a lot of these services that the cloud providers are providing, and then realizing that we need to either migrate to a different service inside of that cloud because of the size and scale that we've reached, or we've hit limits to where paying for this particular service, however cheap at 10 to 20 users, has skyrocketed because it's the cost model is much more the more customers you have, and the more uh, requests and the more traffic you get to your site, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, th those are some really interesting responses and going really deep into thinking about challenges that come up along the way down the line.
Mm.
So I want to also ask a little more about uh, cloud repatriation that you mentioned. Could you talk a bit about what you're seeing in terms of that? Where do where do organizations eventually end up? Where do they run all of this that these resources that they're repatriating? And what's the experience they have? Because it's easy for someone like who was it that started this up? Was it Dropbox? I'm not sure. They famously said we're repatriating all of our cloud resources. So they could do it, but then for the average enterprise that isn't as big or doesn't have such a huge tech team to do all of this, how do they manage all of this? What do you see out there in terms of repatriation?
Yeah, you're exactly right, because that was the promise of the cloud, right? Was to provide us with the data centers that we could use, and we wouldn't have to pay for the data center, the air conditioning, the locks, the security of that data center. I would say a lot of small to medium-sized businesses still don't have the resources in order to purchase those large data centers. But I think most of our customers, anyways, are looking for a solution um, that they can own and control, but also comes at the perfect balance between kind of cost and flexibility. So we have this product called Civo Stack Enterprise, which is essentially all the same technology that we build into our regions at Civo, but we will let you have a copy of that technology for you to use, that makes the story a little bit easier in terms of not having to, rack and stack servers and routers and switches and all that. So it's a data center in a box, if you will. So customers can still have their own data center, which they can control. Data center in a box, as we say, and they can control it. They can, reboot it. They can do whatever they want with it. And then also allows them um, to the flexibility to make it what they want to make it, or that not being locked into a particular service, not having the high cost at the end of the month, and not being able to have to rely on these cloud providers. And so I think it's a mix between saving costs and kind of taking ownership of your equipment, but also finding a middle of the road in terms of being able to control that data center in a box that you buy, and being able to, you know, um, make it as flexible as possible.
Interesting. Wow. So, we've talked quite a bit about cloud itself, but one of the big topics as well as we are preparing for our chat is open source. And I want to even get into that a bit. Could you comment a bit about how open source software ties into all of these points that we've been talking about? What does it mean for adoption of open source projects? Does it matter where you run your cloud resources? What are the differences between where you run them? Could you talk a bit about what all of this means for open source?
Yeah. Open source is a big topic, and it's funny. We're having our celebration of Kubernetes turning 10 tomorrow.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't know that. Amazing.
yeah, so Kubernetes has been around for 10 years officially, as of tomorrow. And we have, we've been doing a deep dive and kind of preparation for not only the celebration aspects of it, but also kind of looking back into history and, seeing all the things that went on in the last 10 years to make Kubernetes kind of the winner in terms of container orchestration and distributed computing. I think if Kubernetes was not an open source project, it would have not survived. And I think in a lot of cases, that's the reason why Mesos didn't survive, and Docker Swarm. I mean, Docker Swarm survived, but is a smaller player. So all of its competitors really face the troubles of making something that's closed source, and having one company own it, which which really, if you think about it, really limits your capacity in terms of how the number of contributors that you can have towards that project, the number of perspectives that you can have, the ability to look at things from different angles and to see what certain companies use Kubernetes for at a small scale versus a large scale. So when I think of open source, I think of those positives, and what made Kubernetes so successful, and in turn the most popular open source project, which is Linux, so successful, is that kind of worldwide contribution and open model. And where that why that's so successful, I think, is not only do you have people coming together, but you really have kind of this ability to look at things from all angles, to take all perspectives into account, to really foster the best of all the worlds and take those into one project. And when you foster that, in addition to building a community around that, I think it makes for a really powerful kind of force going forward.
Amazing. Wow. 10 years of Kubernetes. Wow, I didn't know. So 2014 was the start. I think it took some time though. I think 2015 to 16 was when it started to really take off, right?
Yeah, 2016, yeah, 2015, 2016 timeframe was when it really started to
Mm,
expand and add things like operators and uh, custom resource definitions and stuff like that to kind of make
mm,
it this 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 system that really scales and really contributes to kind of that kind of plug-in ecosystem.
mm. Wow. So tell us about Civo. What does Civo do? How does Civo tie all of this together? Because, it's quite interesting what you mentioned about Civo, being a cloud provider on its own. Tell us a bit more of that, and beyond just the instances, what more does Civo uh, give to its customers? And you mentioned also the Civo Stack Enterprise,
Mhm.
which was one example. Tell us a bit more about Civo, what it does, and then you also said you'd give us a demo.
Yeah, definitely. So Civo is a cloud service provider that tries to simplify the creation and execution and maintenance of your workloads on our cloud. We we don't create a bunch of custom services that lock you into using Civo. We like to, you know, do one thing and do it well, and that's running your workloads in a high availability, fault tolerant way that takes away some of that management that's required on your end and provides kind of an easy way to get up and running and scale your applications and workloads on our cloud. We specialize in and have been running our managed Kubernetes service for the longest, I would say, about 3 or 4 years now. And so we provide that as kind of our flagship offering. So we run all of our clusters in the distribution that we use is K3s. We also have Talos clusters available in all regions. Talos is a different type of Linux distribution that runs the worker nodes for Kubernetes, which kind of it's kind of amazing actually. It only includes 16 binaries and is very security focused in that it doesn't even have a shell. You interact with it via API. But anyways, you can run various different CNIs to network all these components together. So a CNI stands for Container Networking Interface. So we have Flannel or Calico to choose from. Another kind of popular service that we offer is our GPU instances, in that we're one of the only to offer an on-demand GPU instance. And we have different types of GPUs to choose from, but those are for running your machine learning and AI workloads. And that's a popular product on our platform as well.
Can someone choose, let's say, to have just part of a GPU? Do you virtualize it and offer it as well, or will they need to, rent the entire GPU instance?
Yeah, they will have to consume the entire GPU instance.
Okay.
But it is you can go to our pricing and see that we're very competitively priced in terms of the competition. And we we had this region that it's called our deep green region, which provides a more kind of sustainable model for running GPU instances. So that allows us to lower our costs as well.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's pretty cool. So if you could give us a little demo about what it looks like managing Kubernetes with Civo and just the dashboard, that would be great.
I would love to. So let me share my screen and I will do that.
Mhm.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can.
All right, so this is the main Civo dashboard. If you go to civo.com and click on login, this is what you'll see. If
Mhm.
you create an account, a new account, you will get $250 of free credit. So it allows you to test drive the platform and be able to
Neat.
utilize all these services.
Mhm.
What I'm going to walk you through today is spinning up a Kubernetes cluster. So we have one of the fastest spinning, how do you say it? The fastest ways
Time
of
to spin
spinning
up.
up your Kubernetes cluster. So we
We use a new
usually,
acronym for that.
yeah. So we usually say we can spin up a cluster in under 3 minutes. And so
Oh, cool.
to do that,
Yeah.
we click on Create New Cluster in the top right-hand corner here.
Mhm.
And we have a very simplified interface here, which will, I mean, I could not have to press any of these buttons actually. So if I take all the defaults and click on Create Cluster, that'll still
Mhm.
create a cluster for me, which is kind of nice because you don't necessarily have to know, what size do I need, what network do I need, what add-ons or additions do I need, what version of Kubernetes, so we can take the defaults and get the kind of the out of the box experience.
Mhm.
Or we can obviously go through here and click on, let's say we want medium. Let's say we want to change the nodes to 1 node versus 3, or maybe 15 nodes. Um, let's go 10 just to test this, see how this
Mhm.
works. So let's yeah, pick a network, a firewall, which you can choose the defaults, which will open up 6443, which is to communicate with the Kubernetes API. We can choose our CNI, which I talked about before, so Flannel or Cilium, and then
Mhm.
K3S or Talos. I can choose the version of Kubernetes. I'm in the New York City region here. If you see in the lower left, I'm in the New York City region. You can change region as well, which may have various options in terms of the versions. Um, well, not the CNI cluster type, but the versions and the add-ons that are available. But just
Mhm.
wanted to point that out because there are 5 different regions to choose from here.
Mhm.
So I can choose, 1.29.2, for example, and then we have the ability to add on let's say I wanted to add on a load balancer or ingress controller, or but yeah, we have over 150, I think, different options here in the marketplace. Let's say I wanted to add linker D, which is a service mesh.
Mhm.
All of these are open source, by the way. Speaking of open source, we talked about that before, where um, a lot of these are free to use and free to yeah, free to use and free to scale, and there's no licensing model around these. You can feel free to add these to your Kubernetes cluster and not have to. I mean, there are options for some in terms of adding a support plan and things of that nature, but just out
Mhm.
of the box, if you select one of these, you won't be charged anything additional, is what I was getting at there.
Mhm. So the support plan is something that Civo provides the support with, or the company that created the software, the project?
That would be with the company who created the software.
Okay.
So
All right. Mhm.
yeah, like I know
Okay.
Nginx has a option for providing support for their ingress controller and or their load balancers. So that's one
Mhm.
option. But yeah, we
All
don't
right.
we like I said, we're very hands off. We don't like to get involved in
Okay.
support contracts or anything like that. So anything
Mhm.
that we do choose here, we can then reach out to the company or to the project to get support for and to possibly, sign a support contract with if you desire. But a lot of these are, the open source projects that you can view on GitHub, and a lot of these will have the GitHub link along with the a lot of them link to the main page, which will link to the GitHub page. But the idea there is that, oh, here's one, the GitHub for Nginx, of course. And so you can start to dive deep into, how to use this product and how to leverage it with your Kubernetes cluster if you if you decide to use that long term.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to click on Create Cluster in the bottom left-hand corner here. And that's going to create our cluster in less than 3 minutes. I did select 9 nodes, so we'll see. Really testing the limits here in terms of timing. But set your clocks, and while we're waiting for that, I will flip over here to a cluster that's already been created. So this is just a 3-node cluster that I created just before this to kind of see how you can connect to your cluster once it's been created and it's up and running. So we had this concept like other cloud providers of node pools, so we can create or we can utilize the existing node pool that's created with the cluster, or we can create a new node pool. The reason why you do that is if you wanted a node pool that's a different SKU size, maybe you need a larger instance that you need to run, CPU or GPU optimized workloads on. So you would create a new node pool for that. And so to connect your cluster, you would click to download here next to kubeconfig. Kubeconfig is what we call the configuration, or the series of certificates and keys that are needed to authenticate to your Kubernetes cluster. And the kubeconfig is in a YAML format, and you can see that if you download it. So if I do download it and just save it here to my downloads folder. And let's bring this up in a terminal. So let's see if we can bump up the font a little bit so you can see.
That's good.
So we save that in our downloads folder, right? So downloads, and then Civo dash, and then it was Quiet Glade. So now that I've set my kubeconfig, this is just the environment variable where my kubectl, which is the CLI that will communicate with the cluster, that's kind of changing the what cluster I'm looking at, changing the context, so to speak. Now that I do that, I can do kubectl get nodes, and then I'll see my my nodes running, and then I can see the or let's just say we start up a workload. So K, which is short for kubectl run nginx, and then give it the nginx image there. We can see our pod spinning up here. Yep, and then we see that the traffic so if we get services in the traffic namespace, ingress traffic maybe. Okay. Oh, it's a node port one. Sorry. So I spun up the node port one. So if I see my pods running, and then I expose that pod, on either port 80 or port 8080. I'll see if I do a kubectl get services, I'll see the service. Let's just try that actually. So k expose pod nginx, and then let's do port equals 80. And then let's just edit this service real quick. So edit service nginx. And then we'll change this to a type of node port. I could have just done that with the expose command, but so now we have this service that's available on node port 32368. So now, if we wanted to kind of complete this demonstration, I suppose we could go to the external IP that's given to you when you create a cluster in the Civo dashboard. So I'll copy that, and then I'll go to the paste that into my browser in a new tab there, and then do a colon 32368. I didn't practice this beforehand, so this may not work. But yeah, that makes sense because we kind of lock down our nodes. Hence the managed Kubernetes. We lock down our nodes so that no, or maybe I have port 80 blocked. Either one of those. But anyways, if you usually hit that node port, we should be able to get a response, which will come up, will display our Nginx welcome page. So that's a basic impromptu kind of a tutorial of how to use Civo, how to spin up our cluster. And if we go back to the cluster that we were creating, the 9 node one, let's see if I don't think we'll be able to see the we took too long on our demo before, but yeah, we saw that a 9 node cluster is already spun up and we had a load balancer in there and everything. So that's pretty good compared to something like EKS. So even that's a pretty good time.
Yeah, yeah, but that's done. But I want to ask about platform. It says alpha. So is that something new you just added on the
Yeah,
left?
so most of our customers won't see that actually. It's just because that I'm logged in as an employee. This is our platform feature, which is part of what I was talking about before with the Civo Enterprise stack. So that's that is coming soon.
Okay, okay. All right. That's one less question to ask you, right? I want to ask about as we wind down about migration. You mentioned that it's not easy because of lock-in. It's not easy to migrate from one cloud provider to another. So I'm sure that you like Civo has faced that challenge as well, and you probably found some way to make migrations easier. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it before, but we like to get out of the way of whatever tools our customers like to use. And
Mhm.
as a part of that, we don't create a custom version of whatever open source tool. And the reason why people get or companies get locked into a cloud provider is because this custom tool or this custom service that I'm using on whatever cloud provider doesn't convert to the cloud that I want to migrate to or that I want to, that I want to use on-prem or in another cloud, in another data center. So we don't create those custom services. We we like to do what we do best, which is provide the base services for running your Kubernetes cluster and servers and GPU workloads, etc., databases and more, as you saw on the dashboard. But we like to get out of the way in terms of allowing you to use those open source tools for what they're good for and what they're known to provide. And we we allow that flexibility for you to choose that open source tool and then be able to reach out to that vendor, whoever makes that tool, whoever supports that tool, to service that tool going forward. So we really like to kind of have that be a more kind of for lack of a better word, open methodology of choosing the apps and plugins and the services that you want to use. Therefore, if you were to migrate to a different cloud or to a bare metal servers or to another on-premise solution, you could easily take those very same open source tools, being that they're open source, free to use, free to continue to use, and you can use those wherever you'd like.
All right, neat. Yeah, we've run out of time, unfortunately. We just got the last few minutes to ask you like a few more questions before you go. But yeah, it was wonderful getting to know you and getting to chat with you, Chad. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, I guess like you hinted at, there's a $250 credit in every Civo account that our listeners and viewers, if they're interested, they can go and use to play around with the product, right? And I guess that's the best way to get started.
Yes, absolutely. So once you click on that login button, if you're a new customer, you'll receive that $250 automatically. So there's nothing really that you have to do. Just, sign up and get started.
Okay, cool. And yeah, you should definitely come back and talk to us once the platform feature launches. Tell us about it, how it shows how it works when it does launch. When tentatively do we expect that? In like a month or like 6 months down the line? How soon?
Oh, I would say within the next year. I
Okay.
that's not my team, so I'm not responsible for releasing that product. So I can't say, but I do know
Mhm.
that it's going to be less than a year.
Okay, great. Before you go, Chad, just a question to get to know you a bit more. Could you tell us about which open source project you spent the most time with?
Oh, that's easy. Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So I've yeah, so other open source tools besides Kubernetes, since that's kind of a cop-out answer. Um, I
Mhm.
like to contribute to Istio, which is a service mesh, Linkerd, which is another service mesh. I happen to really be fond of some of the security tools like Open Kyverno, or Kyverno, and other open source tools like Dapper and um, a lot of the tools. Honestly, I really like using a lot of the tools that are easy to get up and running, easy to use and maintain. Um, I also like Prometheus, speaking of open source tools, in terms of providing observability and being able to kind of detect when there's problems in your cluster and being able to get ahead of that. But yeah, overall, just things that are tools that are easy to use, easy to get up and running with, easy to easy to implement, easy to scale. I'm a big fan of that. So
Wow, really cool. Yeah, sounds like you're quite passionate and involved with open source, and yeah, have a great time celebrating 10 years of Kubernetes. And yeah, would love to definitely have you back and talk more about open source and more about what Civo is doing. It was wonderful chatting with you today. So thanks again for joining us, Chad.
yeah, thanks for having me. It was good chatting with you, and If you want to reach out to me, I am Chad M. Crowell all over social media, or you can just email me, chad@civo.com. And I'd love to talk to you about Civo or open source or, Kubernetes anytime.
Awesome. All right. So to our listeners and viewers, thank you as well for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and do join us again next week for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.